Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this Microsoft Project Top 10 Features. In this session, we're going to talk about quite a few topics, and the idea here is to get you comfortable working with Microsoft Project. Now, we will provide you with contact information at the end of this presentation. There will also be on the Google Hangouts page a place where you can get a special offer to take the online training, the full training for the Microsoft Project Fundamentals course that's run by GoSkills. I'm Bill Raymond. I'm a Microsoft Project MVP, and I've been working with Microsoft Project for about 16 years now. So I'm pretty well versed in the product, and I'm pretty excited to share this with you today. Now, just a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Unless there is some, if you will, kind of really dire questions where we have to answer in the middle of the presentation, we're going to wait till the end. So feel free to ask your questions. There is a person online that her name's Cecilia from GoSkills, and she's actually moderating that chat room. If you're having any problems, just let her know and she can let me know. And also, you might be wondering if this is going to be recorded. It is. This is actually a Google Hangout, so after the recording's completed, it will go up onto YouTube. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So this is what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to introduce you to Microsoft Project by showing you the top 10 features. There's a lot of capabilities that Microsoft Project offers, and so we're not going to cover all of them. So I'm going into this with one of two assumptions. One, maybe you've never used Microsoft Project before, and you're trying to understand how it works and get a sense for how to use the product. This course is definitely for you in that case. If you are familiar with Microsoft Project, and you're looking for a refresher, or maybe you're not familiar with Project 2013 or 2016, then this is going to be a great session for you as well. What I'm going to do is try and get through all of these features in about 45 to 50 minutes so that we can do the Q&A at the end of the session. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and run Microsoft Project and get started. I'll be sharing with you some tips and tricks and best practices along the way. So what you can see here is when you run Microsoft Project, it automatically pops up asking you if you want to open up a template. I'm going to go ahead and start with a blank project. Now, let's just talk a little bit about why you would want to use Microsoft Project. For the most part, the job titles that people have that usually use this product are project manager, project leader, and project scheduler. All those types of roles typically would use Microsoft Project. But anytime you want to manage a large set of tasks and you want to track them, you'd use Microsoft Project. And there's some features here that make it a little bit better than, let's say, putting this into a to-do list or Microsoft Excel. And you're going to see a lot of those capabilities as we go. And that brings me to the first topic for today's feature list. And that is the scheduling engine. So this is what makes Microsoft Project so powerful, is this idea that it uses some standards and best practices in the industry that allow you to focus on the task at hand and not have to do a lot of math. So let's go ahead and get into this, and you'll understand what I mean by math in just a moment. So here is a standard concept for any kind of project management where you're just creating a list of tasks. I'll just type a task called do something and do something else. I can type, there we go. Okay, so now what you can see here is that these tasks are inside of Microsoft Project. And Microsoft Project, by default, starts off with this thing called manual scheduling. And it's basically turning off the scheduling engine that does a lot of sort of that math for you. So I'm going to show you what I mean by all this right now. I'm just going to go ahead and click on this, and I'll type a duration of 5 days for that do something task, and a duration of 10 days for the do something else task. And you can see there's 2 tasks here. Notice how they're a little bit fuzzy on both ends? That's because we're using what's called manual scheduling. You can see that down here at the bottom of the screen. It says manually scheduled. And so what this means is that when you go into Microsoft Project, it's kind of acting like Microsoft Excel. So I can go ahead and type duration ASAP, start early September. Notice that the task went away here in this view. That's because Microsoft Project doesn't know how to represent it. So what I'm going to show you now, moving forward, is how to turn off manual scheduling and use Microsoft Project and the very powerful capabilities that it offers. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this project. And I'm going to start a new one. And I'll come up here to the File tab, choose Options. There's a whole bunch of options here. We'll talk a little bit about some of these later. I'm going to go ahead and set this to Auto Scheduled. I'm in the Schedule section, and I choose Auto Scheduled. Now what we've done is we've turned on the power of the scheduling engine for Microsoft Project. So once again, I'm going to type my 2 tasks. And first thing you'll see here is that there's this task mode that says automatically scheduled. So you might have remembered in the last time I did that, there was a little pin. Now it's showing that it's automatically scheduled. Also notice that the lines aren't fuzzy anymore. So if I type 5 days and 10 days, you can see these lines over here. And so now that I've got this schedule that where I'm starting to type some tasks, what I can do is use what's called a predecessor-successor relationship. So here on line 2, I'm going to associate it with task 1. So let's take a look at task 1, do something. It takes 5 days. It starts on 8/10/2016, and it finishes on 8/16/2016. The next task starts on 8/10. Let me just expand these columns so you can see them. So let's just take a look over here now. And this task is going to finish on 8/16. This one's going to start on 8/10. Well, what if I want do something else to happen after do something? What I can do is plug in a predecessor. So I'll just type 1 here. And now what I've done is I've linked these 2 tasks together. And you can see on the right-hand side, this pictorial image of my project now has changed, and you can see the date here changed to 8/17, where it used to be 8/10. So this is the scheduling engine at its most basic concept. Now there's going to be more that we're going to talk about as we move along here. One of the things you might notice, and I don't know how easy it is to see on the screen sharing session, but you might see that these 2 cells are highlighted in a light blue. That's because the dates changed. So let me just undo this. So this task is back to 8/10. I'll add a predecessor back in and watch as the colors change on the start and finish fields. They're changing because now this start and finish date were both changed. Now, you might be wondering, well, that's all fine and good. I could probably do that in Excel. But think about how much work that would take if you have 50, 60, 100 tasks and you want to change all the dates. You'd have to create lots of logic, or you'd have to manually go through different cells and modify those tasks. So Microsoft Project does this for you. You might also be wondering, well, what happens if I want to add another task into my project? You can do that. I'm just going to right-click on this task, the last one, and choose Insert. It's going to insert a new task just above the one that I was working with. And now I can say, do something more important. Now I have 3 tasks in my project plan. I'm going to make this just a 3-day task. And what you can see now is that this 3-day task is hanging out here in this diagram. And so what I'm going to do is change the relationship here. I'm going to say this one has to be done after the first task. And now this one has to be done after the second task. Now you can see Microsoft Project has pushed out the dates for me. This is a very powerful concept because as I'm modifying my project, these dates are going to change for me automatically. And you might be wondering, what is this picture over here on the right-hand side? This is what we call a Gantt chart. It's actually named after a person. His last name was Gantt. And the Gantt chart is basically displaying for us a pictorial diagram of what we have over here. It's a very powerful tool, and it's very useful so you can see how all of the tasks are linked together. Now, one of the things that we want to do as project managers is we want to be able to kind of track our project, and we want to put the name of the project at the top. And this is the first thing that I see people do that is not actually a best practice. People come in here and they insert a task and they type my new project. And then they take these other tasks and they kind of indent them. And that's all fine. You can actually do that. But there is a way that we should be doing this as a best practice. I'm going to undo all of that. What I'm going to do is go to the Format tab here at the top. And then I'm going to click Project Summary Task. Watch what happens here above line 1. You can see the project name automatically appears. And when I save this project, it'll automatically change. So right now it's called Project 2, but if I save this as my new project, then this will change to my new project. Now, let's take a look at some of these tasks here. You can see that we have this task here that's 10 days in duration. But over here, we see that it's starting on 8/22 and ending on 9/2. Well, if you do the math, there's actually more than 10 days here. So why is that? Why is this task taking more than 10 days? Well, that's because another powerful component of Microsoft Project and the scheduling engine is the fact that it has the ability to create calendars. So I'm going to click on the top here on the Project tab. And you can see I have a whole bunch of different icons. What I'm going to focus on here is this Change Working Time icon. I'll go ahead and click on that. And what you can see is that all the weekends are non-working time. See, this gray here means that the gray boxes are non-working time. So basically, by default, anytime it's a Saturday or a Sunday, Microsoft Project assumes that no one's working. Hence the fact that this 10 days takes longer than just 10 days. It's taking 10 days plus any weekend days that it's going over. So for example, let's say that I want to create a calendar, let's say the end of August here, for my employees. I want to give everyone a few days off. So I'm going to call this a company holiday. You can see it's 8/29 and 8/30. And when I click OK, watch what happens to the finish date. The finish date for this last task is 9/2/2016. I'll just go ahead and click OK. And now it's 9/6/2016. Okay, because Microsoft Project is using the calendar. So that's very handy for you because you can add things like holidays. Here in America, we have Thanksgiving, Labor Day, Christmas. And you can plug all of those holidays into your calendar. If you want to allow for working over the weekends, you can absolutely do that. So all of this is customizable. I should say tailorable, because if I use the word customize, people think there's software programming needed. No, you can just modify this screen. One other thing I will point out is there are multiple calendars that come with Microsoft Project, but you can also create your own. It's very common that companies actually create their corporate calendar and they plug in all of their dates for the days off that people have throughout the year. Okay, so this is just an overview of Microsoft Project. And as we get into this, you'll start to see more and more of the functionality. But the takeaway here is that Microsoft Project has this thing called a scheduling engine. It allows you to enter durations, link tasks, and let Microsoft Project figure out the dates. And it also has this capability to do calendars. Okay, so what I'm going to do is open up another project here. And what I'm going to do here is just start off with a project schedule that has some tasks in it already. Now, as you know, this session is hosted by GoSkills. GoSkills and I partnered together, and we created an online training program. So I'm actually using the sample files that you would use if you took this course. Now, here we have a list of all the tasks in the project. In this case, we're just building a new house. It's something everyone can kind of relate to. You have to acquire some land, purchase permits, install the frame and things like that. So we have a list of tasks here. So one of the things that I want to point out, and this is another best practice for Microsoft Project, is you can enter tasks however you like. However, you really do have to think about the fact that it's probably not you that's just looking at these tasks. You'll probably share these tasks with other people. Whether you print them, create a report, share the project file, or maybe even if you have the budget, maybe you've purchased Microsoft Project Server or Microsoft Project Online, and you can save this to a database. But the point is that I'm making here is that we really want to focus on how we name the tasks. So you can see, for example, we have a number of tasks here like acquire a loan, acquire permits. Notice something that's very consistent in my project. They all start with the verb. They acquire land, you create architectural design, you install HVAC. Okay, so these are all verbs. Also, it's easier for people to read if you just do a capital letter at the beginning and lowercase for all the remaining letters. So you can see that right here. Create architectural design, capital C, lowercase a, lowercase d. The other thing you want to be careful of is getting too verbal, putting too many words inside of your Microsoft project. So for example, I have acquire a loan. I think everyone knows what that means. I could have typed acquire loan, let's try that again, acquire loan from local bank. Now, we can see here is that now we've got all these words. And if I start doing that for all these tasks, the words kind of blend together after a while. And if I'm trying to report on this information, there's a lot of text to share. So really focus on the minimum amount of words that you need to use. Now, there's all sorts of ways that you can handle this. Maybe you want to add more detail. If I double click on this task, I can actually double click on any task and I can go to a notes section. And here I could type get the loan for the property at this bank. And then when I do that, you can see there's a little icon that I can hover over. So that kind of gives me a way to add more detail, but keep my project schedule nice and clean. Now, as I'm building my Microsoft project schedule, one of the things that I want to do is add my predecessors and successors, but I also want to add the durations for my tasks. So I'm just going to type in a few durations, and I'm doing this randomly here. And then I'm going to go ahead and link my tasks, just as I showed you before. And as I do this, you can see that the Gantt chart is expanding. You might be wondering, well, there's a lot of scrolling. Can I fix that? Yep, down here at the bottom, there's a zoom tool. So I can zoom in and zoom out and see where my Gantt chart is right now. You can see there's a little timeline here at the top. So as I have all these tasks entered and I'm plugging in various predecessors, this is what we're doing, is we're creating a work breakdown structure. And the work breakdown structure starts to show itself in a lot more detail when we start adding what we call headings. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a task here, and I'm going to create a new heading. And I'm going to call this Prepare House Purchase. As I'm typing, I don't know what you're seeing, but I think because we're sharing on Google Hangouts, I'm not able to see the text that I'm typing. So it's probably just having to do with sharing. But anyhow, I typed Prepare House Purchase. This is going to be a heading. So I made each one of these capital letters. So then what I can do is select everything having to do with preparing the house purchase. I go to the Task tab, and I indent them. Now, technically, I don't have to indent any tasks. I could just have this long-running list. But you can see here, it's starting to make a lot more sense how this project is laid out by having these tasks indented. I'm going to add one more. And we'll call this Build House. Again, I'm using all caps. So I always know that all caps is the heading. So I'll just go ahead and outdent that. And I'll just select a few of these tasks that represent building the house. And this is what we call a work breakdown structure in our project. We're starting to build this sort of schedule that has tasks indented that cover major areas of work. Of course, if I want to, I could even insert another task and say framing, and then maybe even put some of those tasks further in. So now we have more indent levels. So if I come here to the Format tab, I'll click on Outline Number. And here you can see we put numbers in front of all of the tasks. So now we have this work breakdown structure that starts with our level 1, which is prepare the house purchase. And then all these other tasks are 1.1, 1.2, and so on. Here we have 2.1 and 2.2. And then because I indented even further, I have 2.3.1, 2.3.2. So this is how the indenting works in Microsoft Project. Now, a best practice is to try to avoid going more than 3 levels deep. You know, if you have to, you have to. You can go 3, 5, 10, however many you want to. I don't know if there's even any limit. But certainly, at some point, you're going to have more headings than you can deal with and more indents that you can deal with. So I avoid doing too much of that. So that's basically how we start building our work breakdown structure. And that is going to bring us to our next topic, which is the critical path and Slack. So I'm going to open up yet another project here. This is just the same exact project that's just been built out a little bit more. You can see here now it's all filled out. All the tasks are linked here. And I did one other thing with the task. Notice I created this house build complete, land acquisition complete. These are what we call milestones. And see the little diamond here next to each one of these? A milestone represents a major piece of work that's done so that we can kind of track to those. Sometimes they're really important. Maybe you're only going to pay your contractor after a certain thing is done. after the house build is complete, maybe. But they also might just be little celebrations that you have throughout your project. But once again, notice the standard that I'm using. It says land acquisition complete. There's not a verb at the beginning now, and we have the word complete at the end of each one of those. And you can see that as I scroll down, interior design complete, okay? The last one is the last milestone, and that just says move in. This could be any kind of title that you want, however you want to label it, that represents the end of the project completely. So let's talk about what we've done here. We've linked all the tasks together using the predecessor column. There's another column that we can insert. I'm going to show that to you. I'm going to go ahead and insert a column called successor. Try that again. I'm not able to see what I'm typing, so there we go. There we go, the successors column. And so what you can see now is that if task 3 is linked to task 2, okay, so this is how we kind of work. We kind of work from the top down. This is the bottom up view. So Microsoft Project automatically fills in the successor column for you. So for example, if I wanted to say task 5 is related to 4 and 3, I type 4, 3, and you can see the successor column automatically updated. Okay, so what we have now is all these tasks linked together. And one of the most important things that you can do as a project manager is manage what we call the critical path. Now, the critical path is basically the shortest distance from the beginning of the project to the end. It also means that if a task is on the critical path, then the entire project will get pushed out if you move something even by a day. So I'm just doing a little bit of rearranging here so you can see everything I'm about to show you. I'm going to come up here to the View tab, the Format tab, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this checkbox here that says Critical Tasks. Watch what happens to the Gantt chart on the right. See how all the tasks are now red. So, but there are some blue tasks here. The red tasks represent critical path tasks, and these are the ones that can't change even but a day without affecting the end of the project. So remember at the beginning, we created this task level 0 task. And see how the task level 0 automatically calculates the start and finish of the project. The project is finishing on 7/29/2016 right now. But I need to maybe change this task that is critical, I see it's critical because it's red, from 20 days to 21 days. Remember, the project is going to finish on 7/29, and change this to 21 days. Now the entire project is now going to 8/1. And see all this blue? It's saying all the tasks changed. That's because the task was on the critical path. Now, someone might come to me and say, hey, Bill, I need some extra time to install the roofing. Do I have any time to do that? Well, I can look over here and I can see that this task is actually in blue. So yes, indeed, I actually do have some extra time that I could give those roofers. I know I can do that. I don't know how much though. So what I can do is I'm going to zoom in quite a bit here. I can use this Slack checkbox. And I'm going to keep clicking this checkbox because I want you to look at the little arrow, the little line here down in the Gantt chart. You can see it just keeps highlighting. And what it's showing me is 1 day. I can see that by looking here at the calendar. So if I go ahead and change this task from 5 days to 6 days, watch the finish of the project, 7/29, change it to 6 days. See, the project stayed 7/29. But oops, look what happened. This blue task is now red. So now if I make it 7 days, entire project gets pushed out. See, now we're at 8/1 again. So that's how we can use Microsoft Project Scheduling Engine to track the critical path and look at Slack. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can handle this. There's a Slack column that you can insert so you can see the total days rather than try and figure it out graphically. But that's the basic idea. So the next thing that you might want to do here is set up your own view. So essentially, sorry, I'm just, there we go. Okay, so essentially right now we have this view, and it's called the Gantt chart view. Microsoft Project has lots of views that you can use. And so, for example, here's a task sheet. Here's a network diagram. Here's a resource sheet, resource form. So all these different things that a calendar that I can create. But here on this Gantt chart view, what I'm going to do is go ahead and say, I want my own set of columns from my project. And I'm going to do this because the homeowner is saying, these are the fields that I'm interested in and the order that I'm interested in. So Bill, if you ever print this project out for me, these are the fields that I want to see. So I can come over here to the View tab, and we're going to go ahead and create a new table. So I can come over here to Tables and create more tables. Now, you might be saying, well, wait, Bill, you just said you're creating a view. Well, first, what I need to do is say, here are the fields that I want to display in the view. Then I create the view. So the fields that I want to display in the view is a table. And I can create a task table or a resource table. I'm going to create the task table. And I'm just going to call this the homeowner view. And I'll click Show in Menu so I can see it in the drop-down. And now I'll just go ahead and type in the columns that I need. Notice as I'm typing, I just type the % and the % complete field showed up, duration, start, and finish. Those are the fields that the homeowner wants to see. Now, there's a whole lot that you can do with this. I'm just going to show you the basics here. Actually, I'm going to call this a homeowner table. And click OK, and close. And then I'm going to come over here to Views, More Views, and create a new one. And I'm going to call this the homeowner view. And I want the Gantt chart style screen, so it should look something like this. Okay, I'm going to use the homeowner table. I won't group the tasks. And I want to show all the tasks. And again, I'll show it in the menu. And I'll turn on the highlight filter and click OK. And apply. There. So now what's happened is Microsoft Project just added all the columns that I told it to. It doesn't look that great, but that's when you can just kind of come over here and stretch things out and make them look the way you want. Little tip is you can double click on these columns and they'll automatically resize for you. So that's basically how you can set up views and tables. It's very powerful. I just showed you a very basic approach to doing this as we go through our top 10. So actually, we've talked about the scheduling engine, tasks and work breakdown structures, critical tasks in Slack, tables, and views. So the next thing I'm going to show you, and if you're not familiar with Project 2013 or 2016, it's a really cool new feature that was added, and that's called the timeline. This is a very nice feature. I'm going to go ahead to the View tab here, and I'm going to click Timeline. And I'm just going to expand the screen a little bit here so you can see it. And I'm going to add some tasks to the timeline. Let's say I want to add a milestone, land acquisition complete. I just right-click on the task and choose Add to Timeline. And what you can see here is, I know it's a little bit small because of the Google screen sharing size that I'm using, but you can see land acquisition complete is up here on this timeline now. Let's add some other tasks. Let's put this acquire land task. And let's go ahead and add something else like this What's another good one? Hire interior designer. I'll go ahead and add that to the timeline. Now, so we can see here is acquire land looks good, land acquisition complete looks good, but look at this. This hire interior designer, you can't even see it. It just says H. That's because it's actually representing the amount of time it's going to take in the timeline. So what do you do about this? Well, you just click on it and drag it out, and you make it a call out. You can also drag it to the top and make it a call out here, and move it around. You can also change the font colors, background colors, things like that. And when you're done, you can just always share this with your colleagues. So someone says, hey, how's that project going? But I don't know how to read a Gantt chart. You can send them the timeline. And you can do that by just clicking this copy timeline icon and choose for email, for presentation, or full screen. For presentation is great because it really does paste really nicely into email, PowerPoint, and any other program. I'm not going to show you how to do that just for the sake of time, but basically it's copied into the clipboard now, and you can just go into PowerPoint and paste it. Now, this is an interactive timeline, so I can actually move this bar around the timeline, and it actually updates the Gantt chart below as well. So that's a very handy feature. And if I want to zoom in and zoom out in the Gantt chart, just to see a portion of my project, I can just go ahead and resize that tool there. So that's a really nice new feature in 2013. Now, for you Microsoft Project 2016 users or people that might be interested in it, there's a new feature, and that allows you to create multiple timelines and put them in the same view. So right now I only have one timeline displayed. I could actually put more than one on the screen. So now that we have our project in place, what we want to do is add some resources. Because this is a key part to managing our project, one of the things that we need to do is make sure that we have resources assigned to our project. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. I'm going to go ahead and just go back to my Gantt chart view, go here, and you can see that I've got these, I'm going to turn off the timeline. You can see I've got this resource names column. I could actually just go in and type in a resource name here. But the best practice is to go into the resource sheet, to go to the View tab, to the resource sheet, and you can go ahead and start typing some resources. Homeowner, project manager. And you might even want to create a cost resource. So cost, acquire land. And make these generic if they're generic resources. By the way, if you're using Microsoft Project Professional, you can do generic resources. If you're using standard, generic resources aren't available. You can still just create a resource and don't call them generic, and that's fine. But just so you're aware, that is a pro feature to use generic. And you can see over here we have this type. Here we have work, and this one, I'm going to call this cost. And over here, the homeowner doesn't have to charge for the project, but the project manager does. Let's give the project manager $150 an hour. Now let's go back to our Gantt chart and add the resources. Now, what's interesting when you add resources is you typically just go ahead and click this little checkbox and add a resource. However, what if I want to add cost acquire land? Well, now I don't, how do I add the cost? Well, I could just insert a column here and insert the cost column and start typing in there. But that's actually not what we want to do in Microsoft Project. What we want to do is add the resource and associate the cost with that resource. So this is a feature that I don't think a lot of people know about with Microsoft Project, but it's one of the most important. If you remember anything with this, I'd like you to remember that you need to go to the View tab, and click this Details checkbox. And this opens up a place where I can add a resource assignment and go and do all the details that I need to. So now I'm going to go ahead and add this cost acquire land task resource. And I'm going to right click over here and add the cost. I'm going to say, let's say it costs $20,000. Try that again. And what you can see is the cost for the resource is $20,000, and Microsoft Project rolls that up, and that's a total cost for the project. Let's do something else. Let's add the project manager. Now, with the project manager added here, let's see. I'm going to go back to my resource sheet real quick. Oh, I typed in overtime rate, 0. The standard rate is $150. There we go. Go back here to our details. And what you can see is that now that the project manager is properly added with $150 an hour, that cost for that task is 20 days. So it's basically adding up the total number of hours that make up a day, which is 8 hours in this case, times 150, and you get $24,000. And that all rolls up to a total cost for the project of $44,000. So what if the project manager is only working part-time? Well, you can just come in here, down in their split view, and change the units from 100% to 50%. Alternatively, I can come over here to a special work display, and I could say, instead of 160 hours, make it 80 hours. Okay, but you can see now it's no longer $12,000 for the cost. It's no longer $24,000, it's $12,000, and it all rolls up to $32,000. So this is how you start estimating resources. You add the resource using the split view, and then you estimate the cost or the work effort. So for example, this task here is called Create Architectural Design. The homeowner isn't going to spend 80 hours on that. They're going to come and review what the architects are doing, and maybe the homeowner only spends a total of 8 hours on that task over the course of that 10 days. That's how you'd represent that in Microsoft Project. So that brings us to resources and resource assignments. And so finally, the last thing that I want to talk about here is statusing the project. And so to do that, what I'm going to do is two things. One, I'm going to come to the project plan here, and I'm going to say, set a baseline and set baseline. Now, what is a baseline? A baseline is basically a copy of all the durations and costs that you estimated at the beginning of the project. This way, you have a copy of what you originally estimated. So if the tasks go higher, if the costs go higher or lower, if the duration goes higher or lower, then you can compare the original field versus the current field. So if I go ahead here and insert the baseline duration field, you can see there's a baseline duration of 30 days. In my project, if I change this to 32, the baseline stays the same. So we can do some math now to compare these two fields. And I'll show you how we do that in just a moment. So to status our project, what we want to do is just basically update the percent complete. So I'll go back to my, well, actually, I'll just go ahead and insert a column. Percent complete. Oops. Again, insert. Okay. So now what I can do here is just say this task is done. This task is almost done. And there's a bunch of ways that you can update your status. There's some buttons up here at the top of Microsoft Project that allow you to just, by default, you can click 50, 75, 100. It's from 0 to 25 and so on. You can click on those. There is a project tab that allows you to update the project and just complete all tasks up to a certain date. Okay? And there's many other ways to do this. The way I like to suggest people start off is just use the percent complete field. As you get more advanced, you can start using some of the more advanced updating features. There's quite a bit to doing status updates So I'm not really going to get into much more than that for this session right now. So the next thing that I want to do is talk about reports. And this is the very last section. The last two features are status updates and reports. So I'm going to open up one last project. And one of the things that the homeowner told me as a project manager is that the homeowner does not want my project to go over 10% in budget or over 10% in schedule. And so what I want to do is create a formula that looks at that baseline that I talked about and the current plan and says, if something goes more than 10%, then I want it to be red. That way I can inform the homeowner that the schedule is not doing well. So what I can do here is go to the Project tab and choose Custom Fields. And then you can create all sorts of custom fields here. In my case, I created two custom fields, one called percent duration variance and the other one called percent cost variance. There are formulas in here, and inside that formula is basically, it's going to calculate the percent overrun for the project. And so then I can create these graphical indicators. And I can say if it's 0, then it's neutral. If it's greater than 5%, make it yellow. If it's greater than 10% or greater, make it red. So after I do that, I get these cool little icons. And these are smiley faces and sad faces, but you can create check boxes, flags. There's a whole bunch of different icons that you can use that represent these different items. And as you mouse over them, you'll actually be able to see the numbers. And these are real-time formulas. So for example, here's this task that takes 10 days, this acquire loan task. Let's say I'm just going to bump it up really high to 30 days. What you can see is that this task is now red, and it made the entire project red. But even though there's more time needed, it didn't actually increase the cost. So I still have a red cost, a green cost saying with a happy face because we're only about 3% over the total cost. Okay, so that's one way that you can build reports. But in Microsoft Project 2013 and in 2016, there is a whole new feature, and that's called the Report Builder. You can see this tab here at the top of the screen. And so when I go ahead and click New Report, I can go ahead and create some really cool reports just like I was in Excel. Before I do that, I'll just show you some examples. There's a bunch of built-in reports. So this is a burn down report. Here's an over-allocated resource report. But I'm going to go back here to report and create my very own report. And I'm going to call this the Project Milestones report. Microsoft Project automatically puts a heading in there for me. And then what I can do is start putting in different elements. I can draw shapes if I want to. Maybe I want to get fancy and kind of do some designer style work. But the key thing here is that I can add tables and charts. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a table. And this table shows up. And basically what it's going to do is show me all the tasks in the project. But it's not right now. And if I click on this, and you look over here on the right, it's showing the list of fields and saying it's showing all tasks. Well, why is it only showing one? Well, that's because there's an outline level and it's only showing the project summary. Remember that indenting, the work breakdown structure? So that's how that works. It's showing the project summary. I could just show level 1. I could just show level 2. I'm going to do all subtasks. And then the next thing I can do is add a filter. And I'm going to choose milestones. And then what I can do even is go even further and choose some of the layout features, maybe spruce this up with some colors here. So maybe fill in this color, make it look a little bit nicer. And then my report is done. I can put many charts and tables on the same screen if I want. I could do another table right next to this that says late milestones, early milestones, milestones due next month, that kind of a thing. So this is a very powerful tool. And it, of course, has lots of page setup features so that you can set this up so it will print nicely as well. So this is basically, I know this is, you're probably feeding from the fire hose here because we covered quite a few topics, but these are the core features that you really need to know in order to use Microsoft Project. Of course, there's much more to that than what I just showed you here. There's lots of standards to be considered when you're building your project plan, but these are the core topics. You have a scheduling engine that you use to build tasks and create a work breakdown structure. That's indenting the tasks. You look at critical tasks in Slack so that you can figure out just what tasks could have the most impact to your project. You have tables and views so that you can actually create your own columns and lay everything out the way that you want it to look. You have the timeline that gives you that capability to kind of look across the project. I like to call that the manager's view, because you can just create a timeline that shows the manager the key things that are important to them. You can add resources to your project. You can add named resources. It could say Bill Raymond. You could add generic resources. It could say project manager. You could add cost resources. You can add material resources. And then finally, we have status updates, and that's where we actually update the status for our project. We type in 25%, 50%, 100% complete. As I mentioned, there's a lot of methods to updating your project. I'm not sharing with you all of the standards and ways that you can do that, but those are some of the core ones. And I always suggest people start with 25%, 50%, 100%, and be done with it for now. And then as you get more advanced, with Microsoft Project. And then finally, you have this reporting capability where you can create custom fields inside of your views and tables. But you can also create Excel-like reports. Actually, the new reporting module is actually what Microsoft Excel uses. So when you're using Microsoft Project, you're using essentially the Microsoft Excel reporting capabilities. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to view this session. And as I said, if people are asking questions on the chat room, I'll go ahead and start taking some of those questions now. Oh, okay. So it looks like they're in the Hangout chat. So I'm sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here. And I'll get over to the chat session. Okay, so one of the questions is, what are some of the available units of duration? So thank you for that question. So when we talked about the duration for a project, I showed you everything in days. Well, actually, you can do the duration in minutes, hours, days, months, weeks, quarters. So there's actually a number of different ways that you can do it. Here is what I recommend, though. Imagine you've got 50 or 60 tasks listed in a project. You don't want to have one that says 10D for days and then 10W for weeks. When people look at that, if everything else is mostly in days, you have one or two that are in months or weeks, people their eyeballs don't recognize it, and they think it says D for days when they miss that it said W for weeks. So I recommend that you use just days, or if you're going to use weeks or months, just standardize on weeks or months. Don't try to use the different durations. But yeah, you can do minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, and quarters. Okay, I don't know if we have, oh, can I go over linking tasks again? Yeah, sure, no problem. So I'll go ahead and share my screen once more here. And get back into Microsoft Project. I'll go ahead and just create a very simple project. There we go. And we have task 1, task 2, and task 3. So when we're linking tasks together, what we want to do is insert a column called the predecessors column. There's also a successors column, but I recommend you use the predecessors column. You never need to link the first task. And then you can just come back over here and say 1 and 2. And that links the tasks. Now, what if you also want task 3 to be linked to task 1 for some reason? So you could go 2, 1. There you go. And now you've linked those two together. There is another way to do it. I don't really like using it, but you can select the tasks. And there's, in the task tab, there's this little link icon. See that link icon? I can click on that, and it links them together like that. But it's the predecessor column that makes the most sense. Just to go ahead and type that in. Another question, can you import a plan from Microsoft Excel? Yeah, so, Microsoft Project has this ability to take in projects from Microsoft Excel, many different file formats. I would tell you, I've seen more problems with that than not. I'd suggest you just kind of start with your new project and build it from there. But yeah, if you need to bring your tasks in from Microsoft Excel, go ahead and do that. The key thing here, though, is don't keep 2 files. I really highly recommend this. I've seen project managers who, they just don't like one certain feature on Microsoft Project. So they've got the Microsoft Project file and the Excel file, and they try to keep them up to date together. That's probably not the best method. So if you are going to import from Excel, I recommend that you just do that once. Seeing if there's any other questions. No more questions. Okay, well, very good. Well, I think that ends our session then. I think I had a screen up earlier here. I can pull it up one more time. If you have any questions for me, feel free to reach me at the at bill.raymond@cambridgemass.com. Of course, the training course is available on GoSkills.com. And again, in the notes on the Hangout and at the bottom of the YouTube video after this is done, there'll be some links for you to get your special code from GoSkills for that course. So thank you very much for your time, and feel free to contact if you have any further questions.